outside the box. I had to think outside the lid. So this is what I did, man. I went off grid. I found out living in a system can be real whack. That's why I'm homestead. It's promo black. I wanted to come to you guys today because there's been a video that's gone viral and a topic that's come up, especially with it being the back to school season. And I just wanted to bring my 2 cents in because I'm a big empowerment guy and I'm very big on homeschooling as well. The ability to homeschool our own children and teach and educate our own youth. Um, First and foremost, we're going to have two conversations here, which is, why I believe that it is important for parents to have a larger input in their child's upbringing as far as education goes. I know I'm big on homeschooling, but any kind of schooling, homework, anything that a parent can do at home. But we also want to talk about just the failure of the school system and how, like for instance, I've heard of kids who are in eighth grade, seventh, eighth grade, not being able to read on grade level, and it's like who was working with those kids before they got to that point. And so I just have a few more videos. I have a couple teachers discussing this, and then I wanted to just encourage you guys and discuss my journey as far as homeschooling goes with my 7-year-old.
Leaving high school and going to college, hopefully, after they finish. We have what's called block, and block is where first and second periods are combined for subjects that need it. And so I literally broke down in the middle of class because I have seniors who simply cannot read and seniors who cannot write. They cannot write. They can reason. They have the ability to defend their reasoning if it's talking to their homeboy, but applying that to a written text, 2 paragraphs, and they couldn't do it. Our young black men, our young brown men.
Now, one could maybe make the argument that maybe he shouldn't have posted this on the internet as far as being on code, as far as, not putting our people in a bad light by stating what they can't do as far as reading. But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, there has been a failure at multiple levels if these kids are in 12th grade and they're not able to write 2 paragraphs. I remember I had an English teacher when I was in 6th grade who made us write more than that and required that and had these higher standards. So then it leads into what are the standards at these schools as far as what they're allowing these teachers to teach and what they're allowing them to learn, because to an extent, a lot of it is just sitting with the kid. I know a lot of it is the large classroom sizes. These kids need to have that one-on-one personal time so you can figure out where they are, especially when it comes to reading. My 7-year-old, she's reading, she's in homeschool, and we were able to even bump her up a grade, but we made reading a major staple, and it was just something that we just made her do. It starts off slow because they're, adjusting to learning how to put all the sounds that they learn from the alphabet together. But if you sit there and take that time with them, there's no reason that a child should not be reading on grade level. There's just no excuse for it if they're getting the appropriate attention and tutelage. But that leads me to this next video I wanted to share with you guys, which talks about why 4,000 teachers quit at HISD. Now, HISD, if there was such a thing, I would say historically black school district, because even though it does service, I'm sure, plenty other races of people, there are plenty of historically black high schools I know of for sure. Yates, Madison, Dulles, there's, that they've been black for a long time. So when you say HISD, I know that's the urban area. I know that's in the middle of Houston. And I've just heard some concerning things about the education system there. And as I told you guys, I'm originally from Houston. So I remember taking the TOS test, tax test, and things of that nature, living in Texas. But let's see what's going on now and why teachers are not feeling empowered to help these students. What's going on?
Your thoughts?
I think that
I believe that
teachers still love education. I don't think that they're leaving because there's a lack of love for education. I think that it is the responsibilities that the teachers have. You used to go in, you could teach with joy. There's so many demands, so many documentation that you have to do, so many responsibilities, accountability, all of these things pressured on a teacher, and then at the end of the day, you really don't have time for yourself. And then when you think about, I don't want to just be cliche and say the money, but when you think about it, you're looking at the pay and then you're looking at all of the responsibilities. It's not a lack of loyalty because the kids are not the problem. Some may say the kids are bad, that's why they're leaving. That is not so. It's just a heavy load that you have to deal with from day to day.
All right, and Jennifer, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I'm not surprised, because we cannot continue to do business as usual as the turn of the century continues to change. We have too many people at the top head making decisions for people in the classrooms and not asking or for input from us. You make these decisions and nobody sees it through if it's going to be work as a cohesive unit for the teachers. It's like our needs are continuously overlooked, and you get tired of always being wrong. You get tired of whenever something's not going right in the classroom, it's your fault. If I've had an experience where a kid walked out of class, I immediately called the parent, and the parent told me I was unprofessional because I couldn't tell her where her kid walked out to. And I'm like, ma'am, I talked to you immediately when it happened. When kids walk out, they don't tell us where they're going, ma'am. So you could call him, and you just get tired, and your spirit gets beaten up to a point where you just say, you know what? I don't need this. I've experienced work-related stress to the point where I've had an aneurysm. I want to live, and this year's my 30th year, and I'm making the big decision of, do I want to continue on, or how long can I do this? I love the kids.
And see, what's so sad is, in HISD in particular, a few years ago, I heard about basically a state government takeover and that they were changing a lot of things from the top down. So obviously this is having an effect on these kids. And this is what I mean by they're not empowering the teachers to do what's necessary. And then, like I said, the large class sizes, the lack of the societal backing for, as far as teaching goes, as far as paying teachers, as far as valuing it, as far as like in other countries where, the teacher is valued and paid appropriately. Which leads me back to, I always do these segments to explain to you guys why I say things like, I found out living in their system can be whack, because you send your children to these schools thinking that they're getting the appropriate education. And I mean, understandably so, you're a parent, you're working, you may not be able to take that time. A lot of people may be single parents, so it's even tougher. So I understand, the pressures. And so you're sending your child here thinking that they're going to get a good education. And unfortunately, they're not. And it's not for the lack of the teaching, but it's the system as a whole, as far as they're not empowered to focus on the things they should be able to focus on, because there's so many other factors at play. Later on in this segment, they mentioned something about having to write down every time someone goes to the bathroom. I mean, if you're sitting up there having to write down how many times someone has to go to the bathroom in a 25-kid class, I mean, that's taking a significant amount of time from your teaching. And granted, you have to be able to keep up with these kids, but like I said, we have to be in a situation of empowering our teachers, which leads me to why I homeschool. I've heard on the internet, which is why I wanted to comment on this, that people really don't think that, a parent has the ability to teach their own child. And I'm here to vehemently disagree. One point was, you went to school and there were different teachers that you had to go to. How do you think you can do the job of 5 teachers? But what people are missing is those teachers poured into you as one person. So all those lessons and all those things that they poured into you is what you can pass on to your child. Secondly, I would say, and this is a big factor that I found in homeschooling, your child thinks like you. It's your child. meaning that they will have the same struggles and the same topics that you had when you were a child. And if you remember how you got through those things, you remember the tutoring and the lessons and the tricks that helped you get through, and the shortcuts that helped you get through and understand your work, you're able to tell that and relay that to your child that much faster without them having to go through as much trial and error. Another benefit to the homeschooling is your child gets that one-on-one time. So, you hear situations where a child may be ahead, but the teacher has to slow down because the other children are not ahead, or vice versa, where the other children still need to go over on a review of the topic, but your child already understands it and is ready to move on. When you give them that one-on-one time, you're better able to assess that. In our case, we were able to jump our 7-year-old up. She's in 3rd grade right now because we were able to go through the subject matter of the different grades. And when she has struggles, when she needed to take extra time on a topic, she would. But normally, when you're teaching one-on-one with your child, you understand that they go through grooves, just like when you were a kid. There's certain topics that you're better at than others. And once you can get through that hump, you can overload them with a lot of great information. So a program that my family uses is called Spectrum. And granted, homeschooling and the homeschooling systems are different, varying by state. So currently I live in Colorado. Texas has quite lax homeschooling rules as well. I would argue more lax than Colorado. But in Colorado, we're using Spectrum. We're going through a homeschool system that will make it show up as a private school on her paperwork. They do documentation for us, and we're able to choose the curriculum. So the curriculum that I chose was Spectrum. And this is their math book, the Spectrum Math. This is the 2nd grade one, and it tells you all the things that are included in it. And like I said, you don't have to be, a brainiac or a genius, because my wife, who has training in teaching, she even told me this. When you're teaching in the classroom, they give you a book, they give you a curriculum, it has the answer key, it has a study guide, it shows you how to relay the information to the children. So even when we were going to school, it's not like every teacher was extremely excellent and was honed in that particular topic. Granted, they were teaching that topic for a reason. I'm sure a math teacher's teaching that topic over a reading class or an English class for a reason. But at the end of the day, it's not like they had it all in their head. They had tools and utensils to better help them teach the children in the classroom. And you can do the same. And in doing so, like I said, they have worksheets in here. They have the study guides. We print this out, we give this to our child, and eventually she was able to jump up in grades. That was the math. And then she was able to jump up into the science. This is the 3rd grade science. This is the 3rd grade language arts. And I just like to show people this, because I know you've been promoted it a certain way. People have been telling you that you're inadequate to teach your own child, but how am I inadequate to teach my own child when you have these grown kids who are not reading on grade level? Simply because either the teacher does not have the time and is not empowered, and you have tutoring sessions. Another big factor as well is that they took out homework. At this point, homeschooling is all homework. I make fun of I laugh with my daughter. There was an old episode on a PBS show called Arthur where his teacher, for whatever reason, I think there was something wrong with his house, but he had to stay with Arthur for a week. And he was like, oh man, in his head, he imagined that the teacher would be drilling him the whole time he was at his house. Now, granted, it didn't go that way because, they had a different dynamic, but I always laugh with my daughter, like, that's you, we're able to drill her all the time. We're able to get her to read. And if you know anything about early childhood development, a lot of it is repetition. It's not that the concepts are too large. It's just more of the repetition. It's more of taking the time. And I bring up taking the time because that sets the foundation for later on. So now my child is reading chapter books. She's reading 10 chapter, 20 chapter books because she had that basis, because we worked with her and made sure that she had the proper tools, which was really just working with her and working through the adversity and working through the trial and error. So that's why I want to encourage you. As a foundational Black American, reading has always been a major part of our culture. Coming out of slavery and Reconstruction, we did a very good job of educating our own. And so, and as far as reading goes, we had the highest literacy rate 10 years after. So, they make fun of, oh, you want to hide something from them and put it in a book, but that's very far from the truth. And that's kind of their point. They don't want you to have a value for education to the point where you believe in your ability to teach your own child. Granted, I do have a bachelor's degree. Granted, my wife does as well. She does have experience in a degree in education. So we do have a somewhat leg up, but I still want to empower people. That's why I bring up that your child thinks like you, and whatever struggles you had, that child may have, but you'll be able to help them work through them. And even for the gaps, because a lot of this stuff is not that you didn't know it. If anyone has a high school diploma or college degree, you know the information. More importantly, it's just you haven't used it in a long time. There's no reason for you to have to use it depending on your field of study, your job, and that's understandable, but that does not mean you're not capable of teaching your child just as well, if not better, as the school system can teach your child. And I would also argue something that helps, even if you don't want to go to the extreme of homeschooling, you adding on to your child's workload in whatever capacity you deem necessary will be greatly beneficial. If you want to get them workbooks for their grade level, or you want to test them, or you want to get them books and make them write essays on those books at home, that's going to be a lot more beneficial than them just coming home not having homework. And that's how you close the gap. A lot of this is time and just enough love and care to spend with that child to get them up to par. But unfortunately, the system is not equipped, or no longer willing to equip our teachers to do the job that's necessary. So that's why I just wanted to come on and encourage you once again, as someone who lives off grid, which also means that, I'm not going into town all the time, and I'm not taking my daughter. I live in the country part of Colorado. So, I'm very big on encouraging my child to do as far as homeschooling with us. I tell her, some of the negatives that she could be experiencing, as far as bad teachers, as far as bullies, as far as just dealing with different types of kids. You have a good natured kid and they're going to school, and they might have a bad group of kids, or not even so much bad, but just they don't value the learning as much, and they get bored with the babysitting environment if they're not genuinely learning. And so that's why I encourage you to take that extra time. There's plenty of curriculum books. They have Scholastics, they have Spectrum. Just look up things for your grade level. They even have online things, iExcel. There's so many other study guide benefits just to help your child get that extra time that they need, that extra repetition, instead of them being on the games, which, don't get me wrong, sometimes that does help with 3D puzzles, with thinking outside the box, with problem solving. But there's a time and place for everything. And when it comes to reading, especially, because that's the thing that frustrates me the most, math is definitely something that you have to hone, but reading is simply a matter of taking the time with that child to make sure that they're able to understand and comprehend, getting them to increase their vocabulary, getting them to read dictionaries, learning words, asking them what words they know, just bolstering them up. And you can do that as a parent. So I just want to encourage you. Like I said, I found out living in a system can be real whack, especially with eighth graders and seniors not able to write these 2 paragraphs. It's unfortunate that this may have been aired out, but there's always a double context to this, which is, the teachers are not empowered. And so because they're not empowering the teachers in the school, you have to empower yourself and your child at home. And once again, man, I just want to thank you guys for, showing up to these videos. This is something that, was really passionate in my heart. Like I said, there's different curriculums and there's different rules in each state, but it's definitely something worth looking into. And I know that there's nothing against you giving your child a little extra time, a little extra grace. Even take them to the library. I encourage you to take your child to the library. I know those libraries are a lost relic to an extent, but that'll that in my experience, that made things a lot cheaper. The memberships and things like that are the library we go to is pretty much free, unlimited book checkouts. So the library environment has changed, unfortunately, because it's not as valued as it used to be. But if you do, it's like a wealth of knowledge for your child, and another way to encourage them that reading is fun. Once you get them feeling like learning is fun, that's the battle, that's the war. But that's my 2 cents, man. Thanks for stopping by. Already. Peace.